All right, here we go again. So, the one thing with Congresswoman Tlaib, ICE could have, or DHS could have rewarded her process. She used the process. She arranged for an inspection. She went and, I imagine, conducted an inspection, unless she just met with certain people. I don't know how that was done. But she had, DHS doesn't agree with the content of the message necessarily, but you agree with the process. So you could have said, we appreciate that Congresswoman Tlaib is using the right system. She's not just, disrupting our operations. So again, you can reward, you know, Congress people with using the right process, because then, carrot, 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 or should I say stick, 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 stick. And of course, maybe you find that they reward the wrong process, right? Give credence to the wrong process, but somebody's got to be the bigger person. So, as strange as it is, because Tlaib used to be really crazy about things, but she used the right process. And in fact, she then could take what happened and what she found to the other members. And it's, it's not tainted. So just to let you know what's going on, because I go, oh, this horrid campaign of ho 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 home, you're going ho 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 home. It's shtick, it's psychology, because what ICE wants them to do is not have to be visited by ICE people, by Border Patrol people, by DHS people, by whoever. Well, because if they go home, if they were to go, oh, please go home, just go home, please, they wouldn't go home. Right? They know their business. They know the psychology of unlawful immigration. They know the scams. They know the attitudes. So they act Meshuggah. You get more results that way. Right? But it's beneficial to the immigrant too. That's what I'm trying to explain to all of you. Well, because then the immigrant doesn't have a run-in with anybody, doesn't get locked up for an extended period of time. So there are benefits to them going go ho 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 like callous jerks. That's part of it. That's part of what Bavino and them are doing. They're trying to psych out the immigrant, not in a bad way. Just go home, and then we don't have to have any interaction. Right. In fact, the interaction is, here's $1,000 in a ticket, or 5 tickets if you have 5 family members. Right. I'd be like, well, each family member gets 1,000. You might be able to pull it off. Maybe they do. I don't know. Got 5 kids. You got 6. Got a wife. Got $7,000. Right? Give me $7,000. We'll leave. The problem is the immigrants don't realize how bad it is to be an American citizen for the American citizens, right? Nobody's helping us, right? My retirement's a scam. They use that for years to say, well, we don't owe them anything. So you just keep offending and reoffending, right? So we already paid him. I mean, this is really how they do it. They're weird. So again, it's just psychology, and again, it works because they don't want to meet Bavino and his people in the street, so they get a ticket and they get $1,000 and they go home. Some have been saving for years, and they just build, they feel, okay, we retire early, that's all. Right? Some are opening businesses in their home country. The fact is, if this never happened, their home countries would be better off. There'd have been more foreign assistance. I know Trump says stuff about foreign assistance. He's giving foreign assistance. We always do. Because, again, part of the foreign assistance that Trump gave to Honduras to get them to help us with the narco stuff was to let that leader go. So we're always interacting with foreign nations. CIA does some funding on the side. Right? As far as using the military for nation building, no, I think Excess Mesh is right. We should keep it more, out of that beat. We don't want to lose people for all that nonsense. Now, again, training. Again, the model. I was probably the father of the model. I don't know if it came psychically to them or they listened to what I had to say and decided that trainers were the way to go. Right? These trainers, these spec op people, that's the way we want to go. Because then we're just, advisors. We're not actively involved. We're not losing Americans, torturing Americans when they get the rest of their life because they get wounded real bad, like a IED or something. But that takes vigilance. That takes, strategy, and something people have to pay attention to detail. Again, with Bin Laden, they didn't pay attention to detail because they did pull back into that mode, right? But they didn't focus. And they lost control. Again, Bin Laden's kind of also like that Afghani. You build these killing machines and you have to monitor what's going on. Well, again, sometimes they lose. Again, so this guy at a young age, he became this premier special operator in Afghanistan. He had a lot of prestige. The shooter, he lost that when everything ended in Afghanistan. So you got him working at Amazon. There's a lot of psychology there. Right. That's why you need to be monitored. And again, if you follow Pakistan, if you follow Afghanistan, there's a lot of tribal justice, and it really doesn't look very just. So again, these are the cultures they come from, and when you don't have, apparently he wouldn't accept the assimilation program that was being developed for him. But that's when you intervene. You need somebody who has authority, like CIA, to intervene, or FBI, or DHS, where they can just intervene and say, "Hey, either we got to get you somewhere." Right? And it's pretty easy for anybody that knows anything about combat psychological injuries. He was pretty open about stuff. Nobody got him to the counselor. Well, he doesn't have an option when it gets to a certain point, especially if he's an immigrant. Like a year earlier, if you'd have said, "Hey, you either go to the doctor or you go home. You go back to Afghanistan, he'll go to the doctor." Right. He may not have needed medication. He just needed somebody to talk to him. Right. Well, somebody needed to assure him that it was okay. You were in, that's war, you were in war, you leave that behind, you move forward. Things happen in war that stay in war. Right. Right. He just needed somebody like a cheerleader to help him get back up. That's what I'm saying with the unhoused people. They need support network. You're amazing. You tell a homeless person, what you've been through, and you're still here, you're still talking, you're still breathing. You're amazing. You're amazing. And again, what you're doing is you're altering their psychology, and for a certain percentage of them, it'll pull them out of that. But if you don't do that, you a homeless, stinky homeless person. He's paying money for you, and that kills them. Right, just takes them down further. That's why the polarization destroys the entire nation, because it's a mechanism, that radicalization. They're radicalizing their treatment of their neighbor. They just treat their neighbor like shit because somebody put some shit in their head. It's bully culture, but a lot of them learned that they weren't powerful bullies over the years. Now they're in hell. learning additional lessons. They actually fight the fact that I was saying that people would go to hell for that kind of stuff. They're being told that this is the hero and the people that keep us free. Like that deep state argument, that's what they used against my life, and empowered people to be such criminals against the combat veteran hero. Right. He was also in law enforcement and other things. It was actively helping. I've never stopped helping the government. Even when I wasn't like calling up on the government, I was out there talking to people, and I'd say, look, the government's sound. It's just, small groups of people in the government that are corrupt. And of course, eventually they took over. But right. So I was doing a lot of, and I was a healer the whole time. And that's, as far as the CIA mission, that's a very important part of it. I don't know if they have any knowledge, but right. Well, if you're not healing that country you're trying to pick up, it ain't going to go nowhere. Right. That's where Gant came in. They started healing that country, and they killed him because they don't like it. And he's a cheesehead. They're ragheads. Right. So again, the whole effort revolves around a psychological program, not to harm the immigrant, for the immigrant just to get up and go, so that nobody has to go to their door, nobody has to talk to them at Walmart or Home Depot or Taco Tico. Right. Well, it's a sad situation, but the ICE officers didn't create it. Do you understand that? Your champion Biden Obama created it. It's just not going to happen. Your Latino supremacy dream is not going to happen. Now, I'm not talking about Latinos taking over the United States by honest immigration or even dishonest immigration. I'm talking about wanting to be Latino supremacists. It's a whole different world. Supremacy, percentage per capita supremacy is larger in the Latino culture than it's ever been in the white culture. I mean, maybe in the South during the Civil War. Right. But not in modern times. That's part of not assimilating. For a lot of them, they're supreme thoughts. You speak our code. You speak our language, because we here now. And the fact is, you can't learn Spanish unless they let you inside, and they don't want you to. That's real. It's a game. Or they don't, have any thought about you, because then naturally you probably could do it. And again, when people are Latino in ICE, they don't like, there's some. I mean, I'm sure there's Latino supremacy in there in some of the people, but again, they're not into that, and they see that turns them off. Like, you come to this country as Latino. I explained about this guy. I think it was from the Dominican Republic, but there was a bunch of people from Argentina, Dominican Republic, a bunch of other places, in the Hare Krishna temple where I was working. Now, I believe they all had visas, and they got them through, the Hare Krishna program, which is a religious program. It's kind of easy. Right, they have contacts, and it's a religious organization, and they say we need this many people, and they take work some sort of deal. Right. So, but the guy that led it, like, I didn't know what was going on, but eventually I was standing there, and we were in the kitchen, and they're all speaking Spanish. He goes, "You speak English?" He goes, "This guy is here. You speak English." So he was like the group leader. He was like, he would run the program for Hare Krishna. Not that it was an official position, but by his experience and all of that, he told them, you speak English. This guy's here in this kitchen. We speak English. You have to practice your English. So he was actually working in an assimilation program. And I said nothing about that back then. Back then I was like, well, the Dreamers have a case. They are victims of crime. but I said, the parents committed the crime in a lot of those cases. It's child abuse, right? to cause your child to break the law is child abuse. Again, there is a program that allows you to better yourself and your children to better yourself. Sometimes you make it, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you graduate Ranger School, sometimes you don't. Sometimes you graduate Sapper School, sometimes you don't. It's part of life. Right. But if we were controlling immigration, the percentage of people that are here that would never have done anything like that, right? Like there's criminals that would have to come across the border like that because they're not getting in any other way. Right. What I'm saying is those general labor jobs, there will one day, if we control immigration, there will be general labor visas. There just will, because there was before when it was controlled, right? to a certain degree. Well, because if you go, like this is my gripe with the employers. If you go back to like the 1950s, there was migrant farmers. It doesn't make sense that this many years later we're still dealing with it. 1940s it probably was. Because in the 1950s, California began the organic farm program, and guess who was helping with that? The migrant workers. So again, just because somebody is doing something, it doesn't mean they're jerks. It doesn't mean that they hate all immigrants. It's just the process. When you're in law enforcement, you have a goal. You have to fix keep the process going, fix the process, keep this up, keep that. But now I understand it's corruption. I speak about corruption all the time, but it doesn't mean that we trash the entire program. So a lot of that ho ho home it's just psychology. Yeah, we don't care about you, like a drill sergeant type of thing, right? In fact, they actually help the majority of that community stay safe. Well, but because they have to do the job. Once the job is done, they don't care. They'll go back to the border and just do their border thing. Right. 100%. Now, again, there's a lot of work to be done. Right. So, yeah, if the more that voluntarily leave, the earlier that stuff's going to end. So that's all psychology, to get people to actually say, hey, let me get a ticket, $1,000 and get out of here. Right. Well, they're going to let you up during Christmas time. They wanted somebody to say that. And, military, again, that's how military deals with the shit or not military, that's how, I guess military too, but it's how law enforcement and military deal with the mess, right, by that kind of motivation. Keep their head in the game. But again, a lot of it, why it's out there like that, it's psychology. That's why you hear Vino, go get that ticket. That's why I recommend that you go get that ticket and self-deport. You want to deal with me, you self-deport. But it can't be. It can't be. And again, when you show me a 14-year-old that's affected, I'd say, wait, Biden did it. If he played by the rules of amnesty, this wouldn't be happening. I mean, we wouldn't see it as widespread. We'd probably see some, but. Well, because their family is filling the slot of somebody who's supposed to get a visa and come over on a visa. There's other parts to this. Theoretically, we're going to have to rein in Mexico at a certain point. They're killing Americans. So we can't have Central Americans and South Americans up here in that number. Again, when they speak about, the Republicans speak about military-age males, there's spycraft operations, there's support operations, there's even, some of the greatest guerrillas in history were like 40-year-old women. Right, both ruthless, I should say greatest. Both ruthless guerrillas were 40, 45-year-old women. Right. So again, we're trying to reduce the number of interactions that we could have, because we know what they're doing right now. What's going on right now is the reason they're being put out, because it's in the cartel culture. Those disruption operations would go to the next level, and they wouldn't be paying $10,000, believe me. They'd be paying like $150,000. Right. Once we enter Mexico, the pay goes up for operations in the United States, guaranteed. So there's a lot that has to be done. Again, once it's fixed, people that apply they'll be, oh, look, there's a position open over here. There's a visa open. So the employers are wrong too, because they're playing the game. Some were, I told you for years that Republicans were doing that they were donating money, but they were actually, the people that were bringing the illegal immigrants up here, the illegal aliens. Again, the idea is that it's an illegal alien, not an immigrant. Like they're not, to ICE, to Border Patrol, if you call them an immigrant, that's a process. That's a lawful process. That's why they're called aliens. Right. So they don't want to give them that status of actually being an immigrant. Right. Theoretically, even an amnesty application doesn't make you an immigrant. I mean, you're waiting for a process to decide whether you are an immigrant. So that's their reasoning for not calling them immigrants, because they're not legally immigrants. Now, at a certain point, you could be, if your amnesty. Now, you're not an illegal alien, but you would be an alien. An amnesty applicant is an alien waiting on a decision. They were never immigrants. When you get an amnesty application, it doesn't accept you as an immigrant. It accepts you as that amnesty applicant, which is again an alien. I guess you would call it a legal alien. I imagine that's what it would be. Right. And that's where I think the big confusion is, that they sign that paper and everybody said, don't worry about it, you'll be here another 50 years. Right. And that's where the disobedience to the law comes in. If they were to, and again, what they're doing is encouraging law breaking right now. Well, because at a certain stage of the game, they should realize, well, if I don't break the law, right, this wouldn't be happening. Well, ICE can't tell you all the information they have on everybody, because it gives up how they do their work. So I'll tell you right now, there are people that are being deported that could be charged. There's people that are being deported that are part of criminal culture. If you run a business and all your or the majority of your customers are criminals, it's obvious. You're almost, they could probably build possibly a laundering case. But again, those take time. They have to put in prison. They're just deported. So they're actually doing a favor for some of these people. They're just being deported. They're not being put in prison. They got to decide which cases to prosecute, which ones to let go. Again, that's where you get people being brought in on a charge, and they say, well, we're not going to prosecute. Again, there are people held in federal custody, American citizens, for 1.5 years, and then they drop the charges. You do 1.5 years in jail, and then they drop the charges. Now, they're just happy they drop the charges. I'm out of here. Right. So this idea that there's something going on here that doesn't go on is BS. And there's cases that something to remind me. There are cases that are 2 years. Some people get lost. I read horrible stories where, like, some elderly guy, they lock him up, He's like a year and a half later, 2 years later. Hey, what's this guy doing here? I don't know. I can't find anything on him. And he just doesn't think to say, hey, what am I doing here? Right. And in worst case, they tell you, as a local officer, I'm not supposed to be here. Oh, yeah, they all say that. Get back in there. Right. So again, if they hold somebody, a U.S. citizen, for a day or two and then release them, that's nothing. They could play the game where they charge the person, put them in a lockup, right. Make them go through all the, jump through all the hurdles and sit there with a charge over their head. If they do get released, sit there with a charge over their head for 2 years. Well, because once you waive this, I doubt I would ever waive the Speedy Trial Act, because once you do that, they could just play with you for the rest of your life almost. I agree. The Speedy Trial Act is one of those things that really does protect the citizen. But again, if you're got, your lawyers, they're going to say it's a complex case and it's going to take time. There was a narcotics distributor that became a protected or he's actually was actually almost a kingpin, but they got busted. He told everybody, we all plead guilty. We all admit to what we did. And there's people in his gang that didn't plead guilty. It's stupid, right? But the majority, we had at least, I think there was like 15 in there in the case, and we had like probably 7 or so plead guilty, 8 maybe. Well, he's very responsible as far as that goes. They weren't particularly violent. They did something violent, and somebody in the gang did something violent, and that's what got them hemmed up before everybody else, Right. They killed a couple people or something, and that was it. That's where you go wrong. Once you kill people, then you go. Like if there's just an overage of narcotics cases, if you kill somebody, then you're a priority. Now, again, today's a little bit different. There's probably a lot more agents and officers and whatnot. Maybe this piece is not that good. It's kind of. Now I got my pub table up, but there's a little bit of spot where it wasn't sealed as good as the others, I guess. Or no, I guess it's just grainier. That's all it's sealed. They stick several planks together and pieces together, and this just one has a lot of grain. So in the long run, T-Lob did a great job there. ICE agents have families, they understand. Border Patrol agents have families, they understand. But, the end goal is required. And it isn't only to attack Mexico. We need to get it under control. We need the immigrants to have a better life. Because if you're an immigrant and you're a lawful immigrant and you live in a community where there's illegal immigrants, you're suffering some nonsense that you don't need to suffer. Right. So, and again, the idea is once you fix it, there's a percentage of those people that could get here legally if they wait a year or two, whatever it is. Right. But what's happening is the legal immigrants are selfishly bumping out people who could come legally, and some people falter through that and say, "Yeah, I'm going to go." Right. But eventually, if we fix it, they won't be tempted to that level because some people will get here. Yeah, they're eating up the spots for the lawful immigration. No, we don't need. We're going to find out it's not only rocket scientists that we need. We're going to need laborers and things. But again, because we have so many people at that level here now, there's no way to bring anybody in. And they're not supposed to be here. If they, if they weren't here, we'd be like, somebody send us your tireage or whatever it is. We need some laborers. Hey, that's the world. Let's be honest. You can't talk shit to me because they screwed my life. I've had tons of different cultures. Money. It's all it took was money to screw my life. Government money, billionaire money, techie money, contract money. You can't say anything about me. For all intents and purposes, I should be dead. I'm one of the few people that lived through it. No, it's worth the case is worth billions, but nobody's going to take it on. And actually, there's probably like 15 cases. Each state owes me over $1 million. Right? Well, officers made complaints and they just blew it off. We actually have officers writing statements. Officers that lost their job because they wrote statements. Well, stay peaceful, praise God, and all that you do, praise God.